For 7 long years, Zanele from Lusaka lived like the perfect wife. Every morning, she woke up early to iron Luyando's shirts and made sure his car started before he left for work. She cooked his favourite agusi stew with love, always waiting for him to come home. She gave up her dream of becoming a nurse so he could use the money to grow his business. Luyando always said, "When things are better, you'll get your turn." Zanele believed him. She waited. She hoped. She worked harder. Every time he smiled and said thank you, she felt it was all worth it. But deep inside, something felt off. He never let her see his bank records, never talked about the business details, and was always too tired to talk. Still, she stayed loyal, thinking love meant patience. What Zanele didn't know was that while she was building their future, Luyando was already building someone else's, a future that had no space for her. Brick by brick, with her money, her time, and her sacrifice, he was creating a life with another woman. And Zanele, she was just the shadow behind his success for now. One quiet afternoon, while cleaning the wardrobe like she always did, Zanele reached into the pocket of Luyando's jacket. She was just trying to make sure no tissue or coin was left behind before throwing it into the wash. But then, her fingers touched a thick paper, something glossy. Curious, she pulled it out and saw it was a property brochure. Her heart skipped a beat. She smiled. Finally, she whispered to herself, "He's buying us a home." She felt a wave of excitement, thinking maybe all the waiting, all the sacrifices were finally paying off. Maybe this was the big surprise Luyando had been planning all along. Hands slightly shaking with joy, she sat on the bed and opened the brochure. It showed a beautiful double-story house with a garden and a tall gate. Her smile grew wider until she noticed something strange. There was a mortgage approval letter tucked inside the brochure. She read it quickly, but then her heart stopped. The buyer's name wasn't hers. It wasn't Zanele Mwansa. It was someone called Tawangsh M. Her smile faded instantly. She blinked twice, thinking maybe she was mistaken. But there it was, bold and clear, written on official letterhead. Zanele's hands began to tremble. Her breath grew short. The letter showed the house was in a high-end estate in Ndola, a place she had never even heard Luyando mention before. She had lived in Lusaka all her life. Why would they suddenly buy a house in Ndola? And who was Taiwanga? Her excitement turned into confusion, then fear, and finally, a deep, sharp pain in her chest. Her whole body began to shake. She could barely hold the papers anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them quickly, afraid someone might walk in and see her in that moment. Her mind was racing. So many questions. Was this a mistake? Was Taiwangu a business partner, a cousin, a client? Or was this the reason he kept telling her to wait? The reason he said, "Your turn will come"? Zanele sat still for a long time, holding the brochure in her lap. The beautiful house that once looked like a dream now felt like a nightmare. She felt like she couldn't breathe. She had trusted him with everything, her money, her love, her dreams. And now, it seemed like he was building a life without her, with someone else, someone whose name was on a mortgage, someone who had a place in his future. She carefully placed the papers back inside the jacket, her hands still shaking. She didn't scream. She didn't cry out loud. But something inside her shifted in that moment. It was the beginning of a storm, a quiet storm that would soon change everything. Zanele didn't say a word to Luyando that night. She acted normal. She cooked dinner, smiled when he came home, even asked about his day. But inside, her heart was heavy. Her mind was spinning. The name Taiwan kept repeating in her head. The fancy house, the mortgage, the hidden brochure. Everything pointed to betrayal, but she needed proof, real proof. She knew if she accused him too soon, he would just lie. He was smart. He always had a way with words. So she decided to be smarter. She kept her calm and followed her instincts. The next morning, she called a boda rider she had known for years, a quiet, trustworthy man who had helped her with deliveries for her small side hustle. She asked him for a big favor. "I need you to follow my husband twice a week and tell me where he goes. Don't let him see you. Just tell me what you see." The man agreed without asking too many questions. Zanele gave him enough money to cover fuel, airtime, and some extra for his silence. Days passed. She waited in silence. Every night, Luyando came home, pretending to be tired, pretending to be busy with business problems. He would kiss her on the forehead and go straight to bed. Zanele watched him quietly. She no longer believed a word he said, but she didn't let it show. Then after 1 week, her phone rang. It was the rider. His voice was calm but serious. "Madam, I saw something. He is not just visiting that house. He is staying there sometimes. There's a woman, younger than you, and she calls him my husband in front of everyone. The neighbors know him. They think he lives there with her." Zanele's heart broke all over again. She asked the rider to describe the woman. He said she was slim, dressed well, and always smiling. The name? Tiwanga, the same name from the mortgage letter. It was real. The betrayal was real. Luyando wasn't just lying. He was living a double life. And the house Zanele found in the brochure, he was not only building it, he was already living in it with someone else. The rider even sent her pictures. There he was, her husband, helping Tiwanga carry groceries from the car, laughing with her, holding her hand. Zanele stared at the photos for hours. Every click of the camera felt like a stab in her heart. But the worst blow came a few days later, when the Boda Boda rider gave her more news. He had overheard Tiwanga talking on the phone about how Luyando had used his late wife's money to build their dream home. But Zanele wasn't dead. She was very much alive. And that money, it wasn't just family savings. It was the inheritance her mother had left her. Money meant to send her to nursing school. Money she gave up so Luyando could grow his business. That same money had paid for another woman's roof, another woman's future. Zanele couldn't breathe. She felt like her whole world had shattered. 7 years of loyalty, of washing, cooking, waiting, gone, stolen. She had sacrificed everything, and in return, she had been replaced, quietly, secretly, with her own money. She didn't scream. She didn't confront him yet. But she knew she couldn't stay quiet forever. Something inside her had changed completely. The pain had turned into something else now. Not just sadness, but fire. Quiet fire. The kind that burns slowly until it's ready to explode. Zanele's heart was broken, but her spirit was not. The pain she felt slowly turned into quiet fire. Not the kind that burns out quickly, but the kind that grows stronger each day. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things, and she didn't beg Luyando for answers. Instead, she became still, like a storm waiting for the right moment. On the outside, she was calm. She still greeted him with a soft voice, served his dinner, and nodded when he told his tired stories about business meetings. But inside, Zanele was changing. She was no longer the woman who waited for her turn. She was preparing for a new chapter, one that didn't include betrayal. The first thing she did was visit the bank, slowly and quietly. She began withdrawing her share from their joint savings account, bit by bit, not too much at once so he wouldn't notice. Each time she went, she smiled politely, acted normal, and kept all her slips safe. Then at home, she started collecting every document that could prove what she had contributed. She went through drawers, files, old emails. She found receipts from when she paid for his office rent. Bank slips that showed money transferred from her personal account to his. Some receipts even had her signature. She knew these papers were more than just old files. They were her power. They were the proof that she was the backbone behind everything he had built. Luyando, on the other hand, had no clue what was going on. He walked in and out of the house like a king, carrying 2 lives on his shoulders. He still kissed her on the forehead and said, "I'm tired, babe," before falling asleep. He still talked about the business as if it was a one-man success. He had no idea that while he was building dreams with Tiwanga in Ndola, Zanele was quietly collecting every piece of her stolen worth. He thought he was smart, but he had no idea Zanele was watching everything. Every late-night call he took outside, every text he quickly deleted, every weekend trip to the Copper Belt, she saw it all. And with every lie he told, she became more sure of what she had to do. At night, when he was asleep, Zanele would open her folder of documents and study them. She wanted to be ready, to make no mistakes. This was not just about heartbreak anymore. It was about justice. She had given him 7 years of her life, her money, her dreams. He had repaid her with secrets, lies, and betrayal. But now she had the power. She wasn't going to scream and fight. She was going to move smart, just like he did, only better. Because while he was playing games, she was building a case. One day soon, he would come home, tired like always, and everything he had stolen would start falling apart. And the woman he thought would always stay quiet, she would be the one to light the match that would burn down the empire he built on her back. Luyando's birthday came on a sunny Saturday, and he was full of himself that morning. He walked around the house humming a song, smiling like a man who had everything under control. He didn't know that Zanele had been planning her own special gift. Not a cake, not a card, but something far more unforgettable. She had waited patiently, gathered all the evidence, spoken to a lawyer, and made sure everything was ready. This was not just revenge. This was truth, wrapped up and ready to explode. He invited a few close friends over for a small celebration. The living room was decorated. Soft music played in the background, and Zanele, looking calm and graceful, served drinks and snacks. She wore a red dress that made her look powerful and elegant. Luyando, completely unaware of what was coming, raised his glass and gave a short, proud speech about how life was finally coming together. His friends cheered, and he smiled at Zanele as if nothing in the world could go wrong. Then she stood up, holding an envelope in her hand. "Luyando," she said softly, "I have a birthday gift for you." He laughed, expecting a watch or maybe tickets to a trip. But when he opened the envelope and pulled out the court papers, the colour drained from his face. It was a court summons, with charges for financial fraud, emotional abuse, and illegal use of her inheritance. "You're being sued," she said calmly, her voice clear and strong. "And I'm also filing for divorce." The room went silent. His friends stared, confused, shocked. Luyando blinked, still trying to understand what was happening. "What is this?" he asked, his voice shaking. But Zanele didn't need to explain. She had already said enough. On the table in front of everyone, she placed copies of the documents, proof of the money transfers, receipts with her name, bank slips, and even a photo of the house in Ndola. "You built that house with my money," she said. "You used my inheritance to build a life with another woman." And right on cue, the door opened again. It was Tiwonga. She had received her own surprise. Zanele had made sure she saw the truth too. Tiwonga walked in holding a drink, her face unreadable. Luyando looked at her in panic. "Baby, I can explain," he started. But before he could say another word, she threw her drink right in his face. The room gasped. "You told me she was your late wife," Tiwonga shouted. "You said she passed away 5 years ago. You said that money was from your father." Everyone now stared at Luyando like he was a stranger. His lies had finally caught up to him, and now both women were standing in front of him, one strong and steady, the other furious and betrayed. His friends backed away slowly, realizing this wasn't just a family issue. This was criminal. A man who had built a false empire, living 2 lives, stealing from one woman while lying to another. Zanele didn't raise her voice once. She didn't need to. Her silence over the years had been loud enough, and now her truth spoke for itself. She picked up her bag, looked at Luyando one last time, and said, "You promised me I'd get my turn. This is it." Then she walked out, her head held high, leaving behind a man who thought he could cheat consequences the way he cheated love. That birthday became the day Luyando lost everything: his marriage, his other relationship, and his so-called success. He had played both women, used one to fund his dreams, and lied to the other to make them real. But in the end, it all fell apart. Not with a fight, but with facts. The very papers he thought Zanele would never see had become the rope that tied his lies together. And while he stood there soaked in shame and betrayal, Zanele had already moved on to the next chapter, one he would never be part of again. A few months later, Zanele stood in front of a bright new building in Kitwe, smiling with tears in her eyes. It was her very own midwife clinic, a dream she had put aside for years while supporting Luyando. Now, it was finally real. And the best part? It was fully paid for using the court settlement she had won. Every brick, every chair, every stethoscope inside was a reminder that she had risen from pain and built something powerful from it. People in the community heard her story, and it spread like wildfire. Women came to her not just for care, but for inspiration. They started calling her the Phoenix, because she had risen from the ashes stronger than ever. Zanele walked through the halls of her clinic, greeting patients with warmth and pride. She was no longer the quiet woman behind a man's success. She was the face of her own. Meanwhile, Luyando's world had completely collapsed. The unfinished house in Adola, taken by the bank. Tiwangji left him the same day he was exposed. And as for his reputation, it was gone. No one trusted him anymore. He had built his future on lies, and it had all come crashing down in a single day. While he faded into the background, Zanele's light only grew brighter.